Buenos días, América Latina y el Caribe. Buenas tardes acá en Tailandia, donde nos encontramos con motivo del Consejo Mundial. Today I'm very happy to have a new host, Mr. Peter Dinsdale, the President and CEO of YMCA Canada. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
A short greeting you want to send to our young people watching from home, from Latin America and the Caribbean?
So great that you're watching, and so great that you're leaders in your communities, and encourage you to continue to play such an important role that you do as change agents all across the world.
Thank you, Peter. Peter, a couple of weeks ago, YMCA Canada issued a statement on reconciliation. Could you share a little bit with us about the context and why YMCA Canada issued this statement?
Sure. Well, part of Canada's history is a colonial history, like I know many countries in Latin America. And right now, Canada is coming to reconcile with that history what happened to Indigenous peoples all across Canada. As the French and the British and Spaniards came to visit new lands, they've unfortunately inflicted a lot of damage on the existing nations that were there. And as Canada as a country grew, they had a policy actually to get rid of Indigenous peoples all across the country. And they did that by creating things like residential schools, where they took kids out of their homes and moved them to church-run schools far, far away from their families. And that caused generations of dysfunction that we're just coming out of. So not that long ago, the federal government issued a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in part completely in response to a group lawsuit, a class action lawsuit that was coming forward. They settled it. So the Statement of Reconciliation, or the TRC is what it's called in Canada, came up with the final report that asked all of Canada to reconcile. It issued 94 calls to action to all segments of society to do their part. So we at YMCA Canada read the report and considered, what is our role in helping our country reconcile from this experience? So we want to make sure that all of our programs and services are accessible to Indigenous peoples. We wanted to issue a statement that said we understand the colonial legacy and its impacts, that we have a role in making sure that Indigenous people all across Canada have access to the kinds of services that are going to help in communities and in partnership with them. So at our last AGM, we spent some time learning and understanding the history, and at the end passed this Statement of Reconciliation, which was a statement of our commitment. And now it's all upon us to make it real and make it happen. So we're going to be very active and engaged in working with Indigenous communities to do just that.
What are some programs or actions you see YMCAs are going to be implementing to take this statement or this declaration into action?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think first off, there are a number of YMCAs doing stuff already. So in Calgary, that local YMCA hires YMCA staff and puts them in a public school system outside of the YMCA to learn their language, learn regalia, learn their history, learn their culture, which really helps with those students' self-esteem. In areas like in Toronto, they have an initiative that goes out and works with Indigenous peoples on programming. What program do they want in an urban area? We have in Hamilton, staff leave the YMCA, drive to the reserve to do an after-school program, a Beyond the Bell program it's called, to make sure that students have the tutors and support necessary to help them finish school. And in fact, we even have something like in Cape Breton, a local YMCA built a reserve location in Member 2 First Nation. So we want to expand those programs. We want to do so much more. We also want to work with the philanthropic community to actually build 10 more YMCAs in Northern Reserves across Canada to have the maximum impact that we can. So we have a lot of big plans underway. These are early days, but it's certainly one of the first steps of building those relationships.
Do you anticipate that the YMCA movement in Canada will engage in shaping policies around this topic?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful to know our role. Indigenous nations themselves are very active right now as a part of this reconciliation movement to speak with the federal government on the changes they require. If they ask us to be partners in that, we will. But we occupy a unique space in terms of providing safe places for Indigenous peoples to come to, in terms of making sure they all have access to health, fitness, and aquatics facilities, that they have access to leadership development, that they have access to facilities that are community centers. So that's really our role. If we're asked to be allies in other areas, we will, but that's not our focus.
Excellent. Peter, during your introduction, you said something that it is very true. Latin America and the Caribbean also has a history with Indigenous people and colonization, and for many different reasons, Indigenous communities have been marginalized and isolated. Do you have any advice for the YMCAs or the young people watching today on how can we better work and engage with the indigenous communities in Latin America and the Caribbean?
I've been very fortunate in some of my previous roles to work with some indigenous peoples in Chile and in Brazil in different forums, and saw firsthand the kinds of challenges that they're facing, which are not dissimilar. In some cases, it was worse than what happened in Canada. I think if organizations such as the YMCA are interested in being a part of the solutions down there, it all starts with relationships. The relationships with the indigenous peoples, the work that they're doing, the work that you're doing, how you can partner together in ways that you can find to move forward. So I think the first step is to build the relationship. And second is to listen intentionally and do work where it's required and helpful.
Do you, is there any way how YMCAs in Latin America and the Caribbean can partner with you to help advance the work you already started?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I feel a bit selfish. I think you can teach us a lot about how community development and the work that's happening that I was with you to see in Mexico and in other areas. In fact, I hope the whole international YMCA movement eventually will take this on, take it on in a meaningful way. As you know, this week, tomorrow, we're planning a session around sharing models of what we're doing, what you're doing, what's happening in Asia. And then what should the international YMCA movement be doing? What policy statements or positions or programs should we build together? So it feels like we're in early days on this. So yes, absolutely, we're willing to partner with you, but I hope really we form a part of a larger international coalition to do this work together.
Excellent. Any final comments that you want to share with us today?
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Let me share a little bit about this new and emerging work, and thank LACA and all your YMCAs down there for the support and friendship that we've had for so long.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.